This is Hugh Culver, and this webinar is called Momentum, How to End Excuses, Get Started, and to Make Goals Happen. And I'm super excited to be sharing with you some of the techniques that I use when I am working with clients, that I use in my own life, and some new things that I want to share with you that I think are really exciting and that are going to help you to do whatever it is you want to do under this umbrella, which is my theme of creating real results and a rich life. And if you haven't met me before, I'm the author of Give Me a Break, The Art of Making Time Work for You. I'm an author and a speaker, and I've spent the last 18 years working with some pretty amazing high-powered organizations and helping them to become even more profitable and more successful. Their teams work closer together. And I have really two sides to my business. So one is that I help people to create real results, so all focused on productivity and how to be effective with your time and your work, but also how to create a rich life so that you don't resent your work, and at the end of the day, you've actually got a nice balanced lifestyle, and you've also got the kind of wealth that you're trying to create in your life. And the other side of my business is I help people who want to become keynote speakers. So this webinar is all about what happens after I get started and how do I avoid this thing called the stall. But first, I want to ask you a question, and that question is, do you get started and then get stalled? So when does this happen for you? Do you get started and then get stalled? Now it could be in terms of, well, a simple example is your health. You know, I'm recording this at the end of May. It's the time of year when the sun's out, we got longer days, people are enjoying being outside more than ever before, and so they're being more physically active than ever before. So they're exercising, which is fantastic. But do you stick to your exercise or your health commitments? Do you keep those kind of goals? What about around your work? Do you have a project that's gone on to the back burner, or a team that you started to work with and now it's starting to fall apart? What about in terms of your wealth management and creating the kind of wealth that you're going to need to put your kids through school or pay off your mortgage or to be able to retire? So there's so many things that we can start in our life and in our work and our relationships. But what happens when you get stalled out? Well, we did a survey recently, and it was fantastic. And thank you to any of you that are on this call that were a part of the survey. We have now almost 500 responses from our client list, and we asked people two main questions. And the first question was all about, when do you hit obstacles, and why do you hit obstacles when you're trying to reach your goals? And this is what some of the people told us. They said, I get in my own way and I make excuses for not getting the results that I want. I have trouble carving out time for myself and planning for my personal goals. I have trouble knowing what I should be working on without anybody telling me what to do. Now I thought this was really revealing. So in other words, when they're maybe at work, they know exactly what to do, but they don't know what to do when they're on their own and they have to make their own decisions. Or at work, I get distracted or off task easily. And at life, being unconscious and putting things off until tomorrow. You know, one of the things that's absolutely true, and there's huge amounts of empirical evidence to prove this, is that people are unbelievably distracted when they are at work, and that our productivity time and the time that we actually have allotted and available to actually get big results done has been shrunk down to probably 2 to 3 hours a day. And people are unconscious about this because they're so busy they think they're being productive. And finally, someone said, other people making their priorities my priorities. So there's lots of reasons why we might get stalled. Maybe it's because you're simply overwhelmed. You know, it is possible you've taken on too much. It is possible that you do have too many projects. And that some of the best advice I ever received was that if you want to be really productive, you've got to first of all start looking at what to get off your list. A lot of us love to start things. We love to create projects. We love to make lists. We love to get out the flip chart, the whiteboard, the mind map, and to make all sorts of lists. But the reality is we're going to pretty soon reach our capacity, and then we become ineffective at reaching any of our goals. Or maybe you're confused. You don't know where to start. You know, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that want to write a book. And the reality is that when you actually sort of reverse engineer how to write a book, it's actually very much a step-by-step process. but it can become incredibly confusing. The same thing with launching a big project or acquiring new markets or increasing your sales or changing your strategies around your health even. It can become incredibly confusing. Just go to a bookstore, go online and look for advice on how to improve your diet or exercise more or sleep better, and you'll just be overwhelmed. Maybe you're distracted. As I mentioned earlier, maybe you're finding that you just are not as productive as you used to be, and even though you're busy, you're not actually producing the results. And at the end of the day, you just feel kind of this sort of dull exhaustion, but you don't feel happy with what you've actually created. Or maybe you're actually uncertain as to whether or not this is even the best project to begin with. Well, let's look at what is it that actually is occurring for you. So why don't you just go up into the Q&A button right now and type in, so what is it in one word only, what is it that creates obstacles for you? What is it that gets you stalled? What is it that stops you from creating the results you want? Just type in one word, what is it that comes up that gets in your way? Okay, so we've got fear, overwhelmed, interruptions, procrastination, distracted. Oh, this is fantastic. Focused, tired, overwhelmed, unfocused. People, email, the phone, the to-do list. Oh my goodness. ADD, overload, overwhelmed, too many projects, other priorities. I could write a book about this. Oh, in fact, I did write a book about this. Well, I think you're going to love this webinar because I'm going to give you strategies in 3 different chunks that I think are going to help you to attack exactly this problem. Because here's the big question I want you to consider for a moment. If we were having this phone call, this webinar, on June the 28th, in other words, 1 month from now, would anything be different? Would anything be dramatically different 1 month from now if you keep doing what you are already doing? And if your immediate answer is no, then I want you to really listen up, because what I'm going to suggest to you in this short webinar is that there are certain things that you need to do quite literally every day if you want to change the course of your success. Now, let's look at what is the typical way that we plan for a project. Well, I think it looks something like this. I have an idea. I have an idea. I know what I need to do. I need to change our marketing. I need to hire some new person. I need to fire someone. I need to do more coaching. I need to change my office. I need to whatever. So we have an idea. So then what we do is we say, well, here's the goal. So we all know this part. We go and write the goal, and maybe we write a SMART goal, or maybe we do a mind map, but we do all that sort of stuff. And also what we do is we say, okay, do I have my team in place? Have I done some research to prove this out? Have I got the resources that I need? Have I got the time allocated to do this? Have I got the people in place? And have I got the money in place? All of these sorts of things that are going to give you confidence that you're on the right path. And then you create a path to the goal. And maybe you're really sophisticated and you have milestones, or you use some kind of a Gantt chart or some kind of a planning tool. And so you've actually got this thing dialed as far as on the day that you initiate the goal or the path to the goal, you actually feel quite confident you're on your way. But of course, we know what's going to happen is we're going to reach distractions. And those distractions are intended to lure you away. And, it could be as simple as just too many emails or people walking in the door, but it also could be competing priorities. Because as soon as you set that one goal, your mind is now activated to start looking for other goals. So if you're thinking about marketing, or you're thinking about client service or customer acquisition or outsourcing, as soon as you start thinking about it, you'll start noticing other examples. And so now you've got distractions. Or it could be you start to create doubt. And the doubt could happen because you just, you're not seeing the progress that you want. And so you start to actually lose faith. It's kind of like going to the gym and working out like crazy for an hour and then standing in front of the mirror. Well, I would not recommend it, because you're going to look you'll be sweaty, but you're going to look the same. And so you start to doubt that you're actually making progress. And then you think about your past history, and you think about other projects that have kind of failed. And then you start to conclude, well, that's just sort of maybe the way I am, or, that's the nature of our business. Well, what I'm going to recommend today is something called momentum. And momentum just comes from Latin, to move. Momentum is all about, it's like picking up a wheelbarrow and getting it rolling. It's really shaky, it's awkward at first, it's really difficult and heavy, but once you get momentum and you get inertia, it actually becomes quite artful. So the trick is to keep momentum happening. And I'm going to suggest there's 3 things we need to look at. First of all, how we think. Like, what is it that goes through our head every day? Because the world is going to try and stop you. The world is going to try and interrupt you. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So it's not intended to be easy. It's like there's a guy, I've learned how to ride a unicycle, as some of you might know, just as a personal challenge to myself. Being in my mid-50s, my youngest daughter and I decided 2 years ago, to learn how to ride a unicycle. And last year we figured out how to ride it. And now I've gotten myself a bigger unicycle, which is even challenging me again. And there's a really radical unicyclist Canadian named Chris Holmes, and his line is, if it was any easier, it'd be called mountain biking. And so it's kind of like the way we think. If it was any easier, everybody would do it. Then there's planning. I want to show you in particular 2 strategies today that could completely change your success around reaching your goals. And then finally, I'm going to suggest that there's a certain way you need to show up differently than maybe you're showing up today, and that's all about how you act. Okay, so we know that when we don't reach when we don't have momentum, when we get stalled out, there's lots of things to blame. Oh, I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough money. There's people that need my attention. That's part of my job. The economy's not great. My team members aren't up to speed. I don't have the clients I need. I don't have the energy I need. So there's lots of things to start looking at and pointing fingers at. And what starts to happen is we start saying things like, there I go again. I always leave things to the last minute. My business is crazy busy. It's like when I was in the tourism industry, there was 3 seasons. There was, oh my goodness, we're about to get started. There was, oh my goodness, we're in the season. And then there was, oh my goodness, we're exhausted. So it's easy to blame the business or the seasons. You say to yourself, tomorrow will be better. Oh, it's faster if I just do it myself. This is a curse that we have in leadership, is that we have to understand that it's always tempting to do it yourself. After all, you know more than everybody. However, that's going to do is frustrate both you and your subordinate or your assistant. I'll have more energy later. Dr. Neil Fiore says this is one of the main reasons why people procrastinate, is they have this illusion that they will have more energy later and they will actually be able to be more capable later. But of course we know that never really happens. That magical more energy never really seems to happen. So what we have to look at, first of all, this is really important, is we have to understand that when you have a great idea, an objective, and you have a great goal that you need to reach, you have to understand that the only thing between that idea and that goal being achieved is you. It's not about other people. It's not about making people change. It's like the old saying, the fastest way to change somebody is for you to go first. And I think that applies to also the fastest way to change your outcome is for you to go first. And the fastest way for you to change your progress is for you to go first. So I'm going to give you a quick little exercise. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, I'd like you to write this down. On the left-hand side, I'd like you to write down profit. And what I mean by profit, is, the first question I'm going to ask you is, how valuable is this goal? So in other words, if this achievement of this goal is all about me, then first of all I need to do a little bit of analysis. Really, how valuable is this goal? How will it profit me? So in other words, if it's a business goal, obviously there could be a real profit, but it could be a health goal or a relationship goal. So how important is it to me, in other words? Number 2 is progress. How successful have I been so far in terms of getting closer? So have I really moved forward? Have I made significant advances? Am I on time, on track? And the third one is, what is the potential of me reaching the goal? So based on my current track record, what's the chance of me reaching the goal? So I want you now to consider that this could actually be quantified, even though sometimes goals are a little bit, nebulous, or measuring your success is a little bit, for example, subjective, like how successful are you at reaching your health goals? Well, there's lots of ways of measuring that, but let's assume you could measure it, and in fact, you can measure it on a scale from 0 to 5. So on your piece of paper, I'd like you to draw 3 lines now beside those 3 words, and I'd like you to label those from 0 to 5, and I'd like you to imagine you could actually measure these 3 very subjective metrics. So let's actually try that now. So I'd like you to circle a number between 0 and 5 in terms of, first of all, how important is this goal? 5 means it's very important, and it's going to actually create other benefits for you. So leverage, other advantages. Number 2, how successful has your progress been so far? So 5 would be you're on track, you're on time, and you're comfortable that you're making progress as you should. And then thirdly, what is the potential of completing this goal as you envisioned it? So 5 would be, yep, I'm going to be able to do it, no problem. So I'd like you to now to circle a number between 1 and 5 for each, 0 and 5 for each of those. And maybe what you circle is, you know what, yeah, this goal is like a 4, and my progress is, I guess maybe only a 3, and maybe what you circle is that my potential of reaching it is really only a 2. This is really important for you to look at. Before I start giving you all sorts of, advice, which of course I am loving to, I love to do, what I think is important is that you have to look at, well, actually, where am I at with it? And I call this, really, it's like feeling the pain. In other words, if you're recognizing that better is possible and that you could actually be having more success, then any solutions that I provide now are going to be much more valuable to you as opposed to, oh, I'm doing okay, it's not that bad, better is possible, sure. So I find that when I work with clients and when I do this for myself, when I quantify where I'm at, everything changes. I worked with a group of financial planners just recently, wonderful people who wanted more. They want to achieve more. And I asked them to do this very simple exercise. I asked them, where do you want to be in 3 years? How old will you be, first of all? How old will your partner be? How old will your children be? And then I asked them to describe in sentences these 3 things. What do you want your work to look like? What do you want your life to look like? And what do you want your leisure to look like? So in other words, I'm asking them to create a goal 3 years hence. And then finally I asked them, what do you want your net worth to be? And what do you want your passive income to be? So these are kind of arbitrary questions, but I thought they would be really valuable for people that are in the planning business. And then finally I asked them, okay, based on what you just wrote down in terms of where you want to be in 3 years, how successful are you at achieving that? How on track are you on a scale of 0 to 5? 5 is you're completely on track, you're absolutely going to create it, you know where you're at. And the average, I would say, in the room was about 2. And the reason I asked them to do this exercise, I admit it's a bit of a setup because who could ever say they're a 5 out of 5 in terms of their 3-year plans? But still, I thought it would be really important for them to recognize that better is possible. And in particular, when you're in the planning business, or me, as a speaker who talks about life skills, it's really important that I am on track with my own life skills. And so it's really important that we quantify where are we at. And I hope that you've done that right now so you start to look seriously at what do I need to do to change that. Or another way of putting it is, what do I need to do to move those numbers up the scale by 1? In other words, if we were to have this conversation on the 28th of June, what would you have had to do to move those up the scale by 1? Because that, to me, would be a significant improvement in terms of your effectiveness at reaching your goals. Okay, so let's look first of all at how to change the way you think about your progress. All of you have probably had this experience where you're going to go on vacation. You're excited, and it's maybe the day before vacation, and you have completely changed your attitude. You're happy, you're productive, nothing bothers you, you are really effective with your time, you're making great, clear decisions. People drop in and say, oh, have you got a minute? And you say, you know, I'd love to talk to you, and I have only got 4 hours left before I'm leaving. Can you send me a memo? Or I'd love to talk to you. Can you put it on paper? Or can we meet when I return? So you're being very decisive. You're being ruthless in terms of protecting your time. And what happens on that day before vacation is that you become extremely effective. Why? Because you're thinking about the vacation. You're thinking about what are you going to enjoy. And this actually triggers something psychologically in our brain. It changes the way that we look at our work. You see, when we look at goals and we look at our list and we look at our to-dos, it can actually make us want to resent our work. We can actually start to resent our work. We can actually start looking at what we have to do as opposed to what we have to enjoy. So one of the tricks, I'm going to share two with you right now today, but one of the tricks in changing your thinking around the goal is to adopt this day before vacation attitude, even though you're not going on vacation. Because clearly, the day before vacation, nothing has actually physically changed in your life, but you're acting differently. You're showing up in a completely different way. And that's pretty incredible. That's a very powerful thing that you can tap into. So here's the question that I want you to consider. And the question is this: what are the things I get to enjoy today? So the things I get to enjoy today are. Now, Neil Fiore calls this unscheduling, and what he means by that is you, first of all, premeditate what are you looking forward to enjoying, like the day before vacation. So day before vacation, it's obvious. I'm going to jump on an airplane. I'm getting in the RV. I'm going to the lake. I'm whatever. I know that's on the calendar. But what if you were to do that every day? So for me, things that I love doing at the end of the day or even during the day is walking with my dog, making dinner for my family, going paddling on the lake. Like there's this whole host of things that I get to enjoy doing. Watching a movie on Friday night with my family. You know, I get to enjoy those things. And I find that if I think about those first, what happens is the work becomes much more enjoyable because rather than I've got to get through this big burden to go and enjoy it, what happens now is I'm earning my way to get to enjoy these benefits. And so it's a complete flip of how we normally plan. Normally what we do is we plan all of our work first, and then when that's finished, we think about what we're going to go and enjoy. I'm going to encourage you to think about what you're going to enjoy first so you have that day before vacation experience. It's very simple. It's just a little bit of a ninja trick, but I think you might find it's going to work really, really well. Now here's the second mental trick that you can use. Okay, we know, as I explained before, that we will have distractions and doubt. It's inevitable that as we're working from our idea to our goal, stuff will come up. That's what life likes to do. Life likes to throw a wrench in it. It likes to make you work hard. And if it didn't, everybody would be able to enjoy everything that you will be able to enjoy. So what we have to do is we have to know that it's inevitable in our day that this is going to happen as well. It's inevitable every day that something's going to come up which is going to distract you. So for example, there you are, you just finished a meeting, and now you're going to go and do that project you plan to work on. You're going to go and organize that meeting, write some notes, work on that book, make some cold calls, whatever it is you have to do. But instead you see your email inbox has got a whole bunch of new emails. So you turn to that. Now you're into the distractions. You do that for 20 minutes. Now you're into doubt. Well, will I ever have time to work on my goal? And this vicious cycle starts to happen. So here's the little ninja trick. The trick is to imagine that you're actually living that day again. Now stick with me here because it's a little bit complicated. The trick is to imagine you're living today again. And the question is, well, if I could live today over again, what would I do differently? So let me explain how this came to be. So many of you have read Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, who of course is this famous Austrian psychologist who survived Auschwitz in the Second World War. And during his internment, of course, he lost his family, he lost his work. He actually lost the first manuscript copy to Man's Search for Meaning. And Man's Search for Meaning has gone on to be one of the most incredible best-selling books in all history. You know, it's right up there with How to Win Friends and Influence People, and Think and Grow Rich, and Man's Search for Meaning. And in Man's Search for Meaning, he tells his story in the first half of the book of what happened in the Second World War and how he survived, and how is it that people survived. And then he explains his concept of logotherapy, which is all about being motivated by having a meaning in your life. I would really encourage you for your summer reading. It's a very quick read. He wrote the whole book in 9 days, just to give you an idea of how quick a read it is. But it's an unbelievable book as far as changing your mindset. And one of the things that he talks about in that book, and this came out later in his work as a psychologist, is that what he did to help people to overcome their hurdles was he asked this very simple question. Here's the question. If I could live today over again, I would what? What would I do differently? In other words, knowing that I'm going to screw up, knowing that I'm going to get distracted, I'm going to have self-doubts, knowing that I'm going to, hesitate before I pick up that phone to call that client, knowing that I'm going to allow people to wander into my office and waste my time. Not that it's wasteful in terms of overall their time, but it's wasteful in terms of my time. Knowing that that's going to happen, what I do is I kind of do this little Groundhog Day trick, right, with Bill Murray. I ask myself, well, look, if I was going to do today over again, what would I do differently so that it was the best day possible? Well, certainly what I would do is I'd close my door. I'd explain to people what my boundaries are. I'd pick up the phone without hesitation. I would only look at my email once every hour. So I hope you get the idea. So the idea is you envision what's going to go wrong before it goes wrong, and what you do is you use this little mental trick to assess what is really important so that I can learn from my past mistakes even before I make them. And by the way, it should be noted that in his career, Viktor Frankl oversaw the health of over 30,000 patients suffering from all sorts of psychological issues, depression and whatever, and suicidal tendencies, and not one of them ever took their life in the time that they were under his watch. So I think it's clear that these techniques actually work. So let's go over it again. We'll just go back up here. The first one is I ask myself, what are the things I get to enjoy today? And the second technique is I ask myself, if I could live today over again, here's what I would do. Okay, so in the Q&A box, I'd like you just to pop in really quickly. What I'd like to know from you right now is, what is it that you could use from what I just said? So what is it that I just shared in the last 15 minutes that you could use to change your thinking so that you would actually make progress towards your goal as opposed to allowing things to stall you on the way? What could you use from what I shared? What would work for you? So let me know in the Q&A box right now, what would work for you? What could you use? Okay, so what people are saying is the power of reflection. Nice. Thinking positive. If I could do this day over, what would I do? Great. Change the distractions. So take time to actually think longer term and set goals. Nice one. Julie says, prepare for interruptions ahead of time. Yeah, that's good because they're going to happen. Prepare for interruptions ahead of time, and so I can make the best of my day. Doing the day over again. Think of something I enjoy. Nice. Where do I want to be in 3 years? Great, Sherry. Take every day as if it was my last day to complete a task. And Lowry says, get focused so I can go sailing. Right on, Lowry. Lowry, by the way, he's coming to my June 13th event. I can't wait to hang out with him for the day. It's awesome. Maybe he'll get his guitar out. So the idea here is that, again, as I've been stressing so far in this call, is, look, if we were to have this conversation a month from now, I really want you to be saying, I'm on track, and even though stuff comes up, I get through what is important for me. And if you have to use little mental tricks, like, for example, saying, okay, how do I want my ideal to look like? Or saying, okay, look, I'm going to put in 5 hard hours here, 6 hard hours, and then I'm going to go sailing. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a bike ride. And if that's the trick you need in order to overcome your whatever stalls you out, whatever gets you away, then that's what you absolutely need to do. Okay, so that's the first one. The second thing we're going to be looking at is how to plan differently. And the trick here I'm going to share with you is, the trick to planning better in my mind is, once all the plans are made, you need to become strategically unavailable. And what I'm going to share with you is two very powerful techniques that I hope you are using literally every day. And the first technique is to create boundaries in your time. So on this chart that I'm showing on the screen, what I'm showing you is that it's possible to create reoccurring boundaries of your time. And when I started doing this and showing my clients how to do it, I just could not believe the difference that it made. You see, as opposed to having an open slate, of course I know you're going to have appointments and people are calling and meetings. I understand that that happens. But rather than having basically an open slate in terms of how your time is allocated out, what you do is you first of all set boundaries that you want people to work around. There's always anomalies, but I don't want you to plan your week based around anomalies. I want you to plan your week based around your ideal week. So for example, on this screen what I'm showing you is boundaries that, for example, could be for creative time. So as a lot of you know from what I've been sharing in the past is I do all of my creative writing between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. But maybe for you, you don't want to get up at 5 a.m., but from 6 a.m. to say 6:45, you have your first cup of coffee and you do some journaling or you do some writing. And then maybe you have exercise time. And that time maybe is from 6:45 to say 7:30. That's a boundary. Of course, stuff comes up. You got to go out of town. I understand all that. But what I'm suggesting is that when you create boundaries, you always return to your boundaries, even though there's exceptions in your week. Then maybe what you've got is planning time, 15 minutes, not email time. This is when you plan. See, when I come to my office at 9 o'clock in the morning, I spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes on email, checking social media, and then that's it for at least the next hour and a half, because the next hour and a half for me is production time. And my rule is to do the hardest 50% in the first 90 minutes of the day. So the hardest 50% of my heavy lifting is done in the first 90 minutes a day. And the reason I do that is because my rhythm, my circadian rhythm, the natural 24-hour rhythm that I have to my energy is always highest in the morning. So I know from 9 till 10:30 is precious time. I need to maximize. And then I know there'll be another time for production in the afternoon, let's say from around 1:30 to 2:30. So maybe you had some lunch around noon, so now the blood sugar is reaching its max again. That's an awesome time for production time. And then finally I leave, say, 15 minutes for cleanup time. So those are my boundaries. Again, there's always exceptions, but the idea is for you to start to premeditate. What do you want your ideal week to work like? And if you have not done this and you are someone that has goals that you want to work towards, I absolutely am convinced this will change the game for you. There's two things that are going to happen. One is you will be more productive. The second thing is you will practice keeping promises. And I'm going to explain more in a few minutes why this is so important. But when you create boundaries in your day like this, and this completely changed my life, it started to make me more of a promise keeper. And when I became a promise keeper, everything improved. Okay, the second is blocking. So let's assume I've got my boundaries set up as I just showed you a minute ago. And now what I do is I block chunks of time in my week. And these blocks are where I do work that is really important. There's three types of work I do in my block time. I look for work that I would typically procrastinate about. Okay, so what is the kind of work that really, I don't know, nobody's measuring it, nobody's asking for it, it's good to do. It's like, I don't know, it would be stuff like communicating with my virtual assistants, or it would be doing something to do with accounting, or it would be something to do with updating my website or posting a blog. And a really good example for me would be writing a blog or recording podcasts. Well, I block it as an appointment. And the whole idea is that I naturally respond to appointments, just like I know you do. If you have an appointment on the calendar, like this webinar or a conference call or a meeting, you're naturally going to start to get ready for it. So that's what I do, is I create appointments with myself. And those blocks of time are when I work on a specific, focused task. And the three types of time is: one, stuff I would procrastinate about; two, stuff that is strategic, like it's very important that my blog goes out every week. It's very important that our accounting is kept up to date. It's very important that my website is active. It's very important that I do certain things to prepare for a client event. That's strategic. And marketing, of course. And then the third thing is, what is it that I need to do that helps other people do their work? So what is it that I need to do so that other people are prepared? So My blog has to be ready on Wednesday so Sarah can post it on Thursday because she doesn't work on Friday. That's a great example. That blog has to be ready on Wednesday or I'm inconveniencing her. So these are strategic things that I must get done. And the same thing applies to all the people on our team. So what I want you to start thinking about is, well, what type of tasks should I be blocking time for so that they actually are going to move forward? And the rule that I use is once I block the time, I can move it, but I cannot delete it. So boundaries and blocking, super important for you to actually move forward. Okay, so in the Q&A, please jump in now. Which is it going to be for you, boundaries and or blocking? What is it? So boundaries is 1, blocking is 2. So give me a 1 or a 2 or 1, 2. So boundaries is 1, blocking is 2. So just type in, which is going to be 1 or 2? Okay, so we've got 2, 2, 1, 1 and 2. Wayne says 1 and 2. Hey, nice to see you on Wayne. Nice to see you on the call. Victor, Vince says 1, 2. Shannon says 1 and 2. Okay, this is great. You're going to have some work to do, folks. So here's what I recommend. I recommend you diarize it. I recommend you have some fun after this call and you get out your calendar and you actually put it on your calendar. This has completely transformed my life. And you know, I've got kids at home. I've got a wife with a very active career who works as a physiotherapist and a clinical counselor. And you know, we have a busy life like all of you do as well. And what I found though is that when I create the rules for myself first, other people will work around those rules. When I don't have rules for myself, then my week just gets busy with a lot of other things. Okay, so we've talked about thinking. We've talked about planning with boundaries and blocking. The third thing I want to talk about is how to act. Okay, now we get into some really fun stuff, you see, because I want to tell you a story first of all, because I think that this is incredibly influential. And what I'm talking about when I talk about acting is how you show up every day. So about 17 years ago, I decided I needed to learn more about wealth management. So I went and made an appointment with a financial planner, a really nice guy. But what he said I had to do before I learned about creating wealth was, of course, I had to look at what I was spending. So good advice, not the easiest thing to do, but good advice. And so for 2 weeks, I wrote down everything I spent money on. Lo and behold, I discovered I was spending a lot of money on coffee. And this was kind of a surprise for me. It made sense because I grew up as a river guide in my teenage years, in my early 20s. That's what I did. And we just lived on coffee. Like we had put in incredibly long days, and it was just part of the course, whereas that's what you needed. You know, you brewed coffee over the campfire in the morning, then you jumped in the truck to drive back to Vancouver and had coffee. And so to me, coffee was like drinking water. And what I realized, though, was I was wasting a lot of money. So I had this huge incentive now, you see, because I did not want to waste money. I wanted to create wealth for myself and my family. So I stopped drinking coffee 17 years ago. No big deal. Like lots of you have stopped things in your life or added things. But what I discovered was that created a sort of discipline for me. And actually what it did was it started to create more willpower for me. And then subsequently, I also changed my patterns around exercise. So I exercise now every day, and I have for probably 10 years. Every day I exercise, and I average 1 hour a day per month. That's my average. I also started to compete more. Then I stopped drinking any kind of alcohol. A year and a half I went gluten-free. I mean, there's all sorts of things I'm doing, and the reason I'm doing them is because I think that they provide health benefits and wealth benefits. But it's more important than that. It's changing the way that I act. See, we all know that the brain is wired to create patterns. It's a cost-saving, energy-efficient way for the brain to operate. The brain creates these patterns which are created with synapses and dendrites, and we all know this kind of stuff. And if you do something repeatedly, it creates a very strong pattern. And it's like the way a river flows. So I know lots about rivers. I spent a lot of years on rivers, and rivers always go wherever there is the path of least resistance. And that's the way the brain works. Once a pattern is established, once you start thinking a certain way, a pattern is established, and the more times you think that way, the more it becomes the path of least resistance. So for example, I work with some people that say, I must respond to my emails really, quickly, urgently, right? I can't let them go. Well, of course, once you start thinking that way, you'll always be checking your email. Or other people say, I'm really drowsy every afternoon at 2:30. Well, once you start thinking that way, the brain goes, okay, it's 2:30, start getting drowsy because you told me you're drowsy. I really need a Coke at 1 o'clock, or whatever it is, or I never have enough energy at the end of the day for exercise. So whatever it is, you start thinking, the brain goes, oh, that's the easiest way for me to think. That's the path of least resistance. So now the brain will always think that way. So when it comes to you moving from idea to goal, whatever you're thinking that gets in your way will become more and more entrenched and will become the way that you think. And it goes back to the old line, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Change it. What I'm going to suggest is make a change. See, so far we've been talking about tactics. We've been talking about things like, creating boundaries and blocking, and tactics like asking yourself, okay, what do I get to enjoy today, or if I get to live today over. But now I want you to start thinking about the way that you actually show up. And the question I want to ask yourself is this: are you a promise keeper? Are you a promise keeper? You see, I believe the way you reach the goals in your life, whether it's about relationships or health or wealth or whatever, your business goals, is you have to be an impeccable promise keeper, because everything you do to reach that goal is about making commitments and keeping that commitment. That's all about promise keeping. So the person that says, okay, at 1 o'clock I'm going to start working on this thing, and they don't start till 1:30 or 1:45, or maybe they blow it off altogether, they've just taught the brain that they're not a promise keeper. The person that makes the big, huge list in the morning that's got way too much on their list that they can ever achieve, and they finish the day with only a third of those things crossed off, they teach the brain that they are not a good planner. And so the brain goes, you're not a good planner. So that tomorrow when you come in and make a new list, the brain is saying, well, that's a bit of a joke. You're not a good planner. Why are you making this list? You're not going to achieve it anyways. So we have to be very careful to carve the paths in our brain that we want to carve. So I'm going to give you 3 simple things to look at. And I want you to understand why I'm sharing these with you, because they have nothing to do with finance or business or teams or any of those normal things that we make goals about. What they're all about is keeping promises. You see, when I stopped drinking coffee, I think I became a little bit better as a promise keeper. So I want to share with you some really amazing research around this, and I'll share with you 3 ways that you can do it. So first of all, let's look at 3 ways you could become a promise keeper. Okay, here's the first one. Change your diet. There's 3 ways to be in better physical shape. Eat better, eat less, exercise more. So we all know that. Eat better, eat less, exercise more. And of course, sleep better and all these other things, but those are the 3 main ones. Eat better, eat less, sleep more. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is I'm going to encourage you to change one thing in your diet. Yes, it will help you with your health. Of course, we all need that. That's great. But more importantly, it makes you a promise keeper. Here's one example. Remove sugar from your coffee or your tea. Only drink water after 11 o'clock in the morning. Remove salt from your diet. Don't order dessert at lunch. Or if you're interested in going gluten-free, simply stop buying bread and find alternatives like quinoa and rice, and there's tons of things in the stores now that allow you to go gluten-free. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to pick one thing and to change it starting today. Just to change it and to make it an absolute habit. And what you'll discover is that when you change one thing, you build more willpower. And when you build more willpower, you are more successful at creating and achieving goals. Here's another example. Fitness promises. Walk 20 minutes before every meal or after every meal. Just 20 minutes a day. If you did that, by the way, you'd be in the top probably 5 or 10% of all Canadians and Americans as far as health. Go to yoga once a week. Take the stairs to your office. Park 5 blocks away from your office and walk. Stand up every 20 minutes and just do a movement break, which the research shows is incredibly effective for reducing the negative effects of sitting for too much every day. Go for a hike or a long cycle every Saturday in the morning. You know, for me, my ritual is Saturday morning as I run with the guys, and then run with my dog after that. So it's a good 90-minute workout. And then Sunday morning I walk with my dog up in the hills with a bunch of guys. And so that's another 90 minutes. So every weekend I've got this great ritual. Third one, morning promises. So if you've not received my new ebook called Join the Morning Club, just contact us and we'll send it to you. But it's a really fun thing to do, is to change your morning routine. And of course, keep in mind, you probably have to change when you go to bed. But here's some ideas for your morning routine. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier and get up 30 minutes earlier and use that time just for yourself. Start every day by drinking water. Write for 30 minutes every morning. Journaling, gratitude, working on a book, whatever, your memoirs, whatever you want. Stay off your email until 9 a.m. For a lot of you, that would be a huge change. Read an inspirational book, a chapter in a book, or a quotation every morning. There was one I read this morning that I just absolutely loved, which was, I think it's from Ben Franklin, and it's something not worth doing is not worth doing well. That's one to puzzle over. Something not worth doing is not worth doing well. A lot of us major in the minors, and what we do is we do things really well that weren't needed in the first place. Great quote to think about. Finally, enjoy 20 minutes of meditation. Here's some of the research, and a lot of this comes from an excellent book by Dr. Kelly McGonigal called The Willpower Instinct. In this one example, people were simply asked to record what they ate every day. Now, I want you to understand, they weren't asked to eat differently. They weren't asked to exercise more. They simply were asked to record what they eat every day. So I want you to notice that's a promise. The promise is you need to write down what you eat every day. That's the commitment. And what they found over only 14 days, 2 weeks, and this is a test of over 65 people that were ranging from in their teenage years to in their 60s. And what they found over just 2 weeks was that these people ate better, they ate less, they drank less alcohol, and they smoked less, even though they were not asked to do any of those things. And the idea is that because they built up a certain willpower in one area, and albeit, of course, they're focused on food and consumption, but they built up a willpower in one area, which is, okay, every day I have to do this thing. Every day I have to write down what I eat. They actually improved in other areas that require willpower, like drinking less alcohol, smoking less. In another example, this is a really interesting one, they actually measured the quality of people's relationship with their partners in terms of how often you have a fight. And then they took the subject group, again about 60 people, they divided them into thirds. And they said, okay, 1/3 we're not going to give any advice to. The other third, the second third, what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to use your left hand for writing, opening doors, and shaking hands, and brushing your teeth. And the third group, the third third of the group, what we're going to ask you to do is to say the word yes instead of yeah, and to try not to swear. So try not to use any, whatever you call them, swear words, whatever. Okay, so the first group, no advice, don't do anything differently. Second group, use your left hand. Third group, we want you to say yes instead of yeah, and we want you to also avoid swearing. And what they discovered over a 3-week period was that those two groups that had to exercise willpower, in other words, every day they had to pay attention to what they were doing, had a dramatic improvement in terms of less fights, less arguments, less disagreements with their partner. Because obviously, avoiding disagreements and avoiding fights requires willpower, right? Because your natural tendency, if someone comes at you, is to fight back. And so to avoid that means you have to require willpower. You have to think about the big picture. You have to think about what you really want, all those sorts of things. So to me, this is so fascinating. And what I've discovered is that by simply starting with something like coffee and then moving to all these other disciplines, what I found is it started to improve my quality of my life. One of the things that I do, for example, is that I, every morning at 7 o'clock, which is the time that I go for exercise, so I've written from 5 till 7. At 7 o'clock, I stand up exactly at 7. And I hate it if it gets to 7:01 or 7:02. It's never gone past 7:05. And the reason I stand up at 7 o'clock exactly is not because I really care that it's exactly 7, but I don't want to start my day by breaking a promise. So my whole message to you here is this is about a lifestyle change. And I know it may sound kind of strange that you're going to do something that isn't about the specific goal that you've got, but what I'm trying to encourage you to start thinking about is that how you do anything is how you do everything. And so if you want to change the outcome of reaching your goal, you need to start looking at where do you have slippage in your life? Where is it you're not keeping promises in your life? Because I can guarantee you, if your brain has learned that you're not a promise keeper, your brain is going to have a really hard time keeping promises about achieving your goal. I hope that makes sense to you. So, okay, here we go again. Please type into the Q&A box, what is a promise that you could make to yourself over the next 30 days? What's a promise you can make to yourself over the next 30 days that you know you could keep that would be kind of a fun challenge? What's a promise you could make to yourself? Go ahead, type that in, please, while I have a drink of water. Oh man, Janet said no coffee during the week. All right, I want you to email me about that one. We've got, let's see here, we've got, Marianne says, change the diet, no bread. I've been off bread now for 16 months. Love it, absolutely love it. Oh, Wayne, okay buddy, leave work at 3:30. I'm going to hold you to that. Victor says that when the alarm clock goes off, get out of bed. Nice. We've got walk, be on time, floss. I love the idea of saying yes instead of yeah. Only water after 11 a.m. Record what I eat, go to bed earlier. 20-minute walk after meals, and Saturday, Sunday long walk. Good, Sharon. You're going to love that. Okay, we've got go to bed 30 minutes earlier, more water. Daryl says start the day earlier. Oh, Daryl, you're going to love that, man. Omar says wake up at 5:30 and write for 30 minutes. Maureen, I am going to get up 1 hour earlier. I love it. Sherry says don't turn on the news while getting ready for work in the morning. Teresa says go to bed earlier. I drink 3 bottles of water a day, says Rose. No pop after 1. Yes, no pop after 1. Terry says, I keep small family promises I've already made but have not done yet. Nice. The family, see, my family, Terry, notices that stuff. And, you know, it's little things like I promised to make dinner or showing up 5 minutes early to take a girl off to, you know, soccer or the orthodontist. People notice that stuff, and so even though it's not a big deal, it is a big deal. I love this. No Diet Pepsi, diarize, walk 30 minutes. By the way, Kelly McGonigal had some really strong words about diet soda pop as far as what it does to your willpower. It's a kind of just a quick little sidebar. It's a double whammy, apparently. So willpower is very much influenced by blood sugar, by glucose levels. Quick little story. In one of the experiments, they asked these college students, what would you rather have, $120 tomorrow or $450 30 days from now? $120 tomorrow or $450 30 days from now? Well, obviously, everybody on this call, I would hope, would pick $450 30 days from now. But in fact, what they did was they asked them not to eat for 4 hours before they came into the room. And so blood sugar levels are extremely low. And what they found was that 67% of them would go for $120 tomorrow, because blood sugar levels are a huge factor in terms of your willpower. That's why for a lot of you, you need to be snacking more often during the day. You need to be looking at how you actually maintain that blood sugar level. And what she said about diet soda pop was that because it has no sugar, it's a double whammy. What happens is the brain thinks it's getting sugar, so it shuts down the excretion or the production of blood sugar. And what happens is you don't get sugar, but also your blood sugar is being shut down, so it's not being released naturally from the blood, and so you get a double whammy, a double negative whammy. And so one thing we know is that willpower decreases as you go through the day, but also food, of course, is a natural way for us to increase our blood sugar. And so if you want to have more willpower in the afternoon, you need to be very careful and watch what you're consuming during the day to make sure that it stays high. Okay, great. You guys, look, we got 7 minutes left. I'm absolutely loving the feedback that I'm getting here. Let's do a quick little wrap up. I talked about momentum as being super important because we are always going to get the stall. And here's the 3 things that I suggest are going to help you to overcome that and to keep momentum. First is adopt the day before vacation thinking. So things I get to enjoy today are, if I could live today over, here's what I would do differently. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant stuff. Secondly, we talked about being strategically unavailable, creating boundaries and blocking because you need to come first. You can't serve people if you're constantly being run off your feet. And if you want to really serve people, you need to protect your time first. And thirdly, we talked about how you do anything is how you do everything. And so start looking at diet promises, fitness promises, morning promises. Become a promise keeper in small things, and you will become a promise keeper in big things. I want to share with you how you can go even further. And you see, all of this stuff that I do around How to Create Real Results and a Rich Life is all helping people, I believe, to create big change in our world, which is what we need. And so I've created a program that goes even further. So if you'd like to bring all the pieces together, our program is called Time Freedom Formula, How to Create Real Results and a Rich Life. And we're happy to say now we've had 50 graduates go through this program, which is super exciting. It's only been out for 2 months. And this is how it works. It happens over 7 days. And over 7 days, you've got a commitment of maybe 15 minutes a day to watch a video, and then to do 1 small exercise or 2 small exercises. And it's designed that you can do it over the course of a month, over the course of 2 months, but we really recommend you do it over the course of 7 days, as best as you can, 15 minutes a day. What is included in the program is we start with how to become unbusy. You've got to unpack busy. It's no good for me to help with advice and strategies and tactics if you're already too busy to use them. Secondly, we look at how to create goals properly so you actually know what to work towards. Third, on day 3 is all about how to think differently. So as I talked about today, you can actually create a discipline that trains your brain to become a promise keeper. How to plan like a pilot, create super systems, hero habits, and then how to actually make it all come together. This is what some people have been saying about the program. Oh, Lowry, who's on the call, he says, lots of great tools that have already impacted the way I'm working. Claudine said, I finally organized my office and created a new system to file my paperwork. John said, focusing on the flight plan and day plan has really helped me to get things done. So look, you've been awesome answering all these crazy questions I've thrown at you and contributing in the call. So we're going to take $50 off the price of this course. So normally I sell it for $197, and we're going to take $50 off this course for $147. You just simply need to go to hughculver.com. There's a video there that explains the whole program. So hughculver.com/TFF for Time Freedom Formula, TFF. And then when it comes time to purchase it at $147, just simply use the code SAVE50. And we're going to make this offer available till Friday. So Friday night you've got, and we'll send you a quick little reminder, but on Friday night this offer will come down. So it's just a quick little offer as a thank you for being on this webinar. And what I'd like to do to wrap it up is to have one last feedback from you in terms of Q&A, and that is, what topic would you like next for a webinar? So what is it that you also would like to know how to overcome? What struggles are you having in terms of creating real results and a rich life that you think that I can help you with? So if you just take a minute and type that into Q&A, what would you like to know next webinar, which is going to be about 3 weeks from now? You'll see the announcements. What topic would you like me to take on that's going to help you in your life? Okay, so we've got we've got some great feedback here. So maintaining focus, dealing with negative people, how to handle competing priorities, so great. We've got work-life balance, measuring success, nice one. How to handle difficult employees, how to be right creatively in the morning. Oh, this is great feedback. Thank you, everyone. Gratitude. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We've got dealing with conflict, preparing for face-to-face meetings with prospective clients, how to manage outside influence on promise keeping. Oh, wonderful. So this is great. Thank you for this feedback. It's really, really helpful. If I can't do it on the next webinar, we'll do these topics on future webinars. So again, go to hughculver.com/TFF. Do this today to make sure you get to take advantage of this discount of $50, and type in SAVE50 when you hit the buy button, and that's going to automatically take $50 off of the price. I want to thank you for being on this webinar. You know, it really is wonderful feedback for me in terms of the work that I'm doing as I progress forward. I think that for any of you that read my blog around 1460, so I wrote a blog called 1460 recently, which was all about how I had 1460 days until I turned 60. And today I would be on, let's see, 58. So I'm on 1402. And the point I want to make is that what's become really clear to me is that I have a really important goal, and that is to really help people as best as I can over the next 1402 days to create real results and a rich life. And what really helps is when people give me feedback like you've been doing all morning long. So I really appreciate that. It's so helpful for me to know what part of that formula do you want me to start to help you with. And if there's any way that we can help you with your life and work, then just give us a call. Just go to info@hughculver.com or contact me directly at hugh@hughculver.com. So with that, I want to thank you for being on the webinar. I really appreciate your attention and your time. You're going to be getting an invitation to watch this as a recording coming out tomorrow morning. So if you want to share that with other people, we'd really appreciate that, just to get the word out and to help other people with getting more momentum in their life. So thanks everybody for being on the call. Really appreciate your time. Go out there, be your best, see the best in others, and hey, make it happen. Thanks for being on the call.